Pima County, and we'll do that much more. And then aligning those efforts together so that we're making sure that the work that we're doing is similar across the board. I'll give you a good example. We are currently working with ASU and the state of Arizona on mapping. So Connect Pima, the Office of Digital Inclusion, has a dashboard with a tremendous amount of demographics related to everything from socioeconomic status to do you have a device at home? Okay. And making sure that if you're looking at our dashboard and then you go to ASU's dashboard, the information looks similar. And if you go to the state's broadband map, the information looks similar. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing to align those activities. And so last but not least, go ahead. Yeah. How can you help? Connecting the dots for your community members. Okay. Helping them to understand that having high-speed internet at home, a computing device, and the digital skills actually improves their sustainability in the home, but it also improves our economic development within our own community. Okay. And then championing the investment in broadband infrastructure. And that is from, if you're talking to a Board of Supervisors member, you're talking to a City of Tucson council member, you happen to live in Marana and you're talking to a town council member, just reiterating that it's important that we spend the money to make sure that the broadband infrastructure is there. I don't know if you know anybody that lives in Ajo or Arivaca. If it rains too hard, their internet goes out, okay? And so it's that kind of thing. It's incumbent upon Pima County to make sure that internet is affordable and it's high speed across the entirety of the county, okay? Not just in the city of Tucson, all right? And then talking to funders, local government entities, if they're talking about things that they wish to fund or you see it, digital inclusion crosses all spectrums. It crosses everything, okay? So it's very important for us to make sure that we're talking about those things with the people that make decisions in our community, all right? So something that I would like to do real quickly, this is fast and furious, you guys. This activity could take a lot longer than it does. So online, if you can share the link that I sent you with the online participants, we're going to do an activity that will help to inform our strategic plan. So the Office of Digital Inclusion is currently undergoing a new strategic plan for the next 5 years. So Connect Pima was our strategic plan for 2 years. Okay. So now we are creating a new strategic plan, and we need to make sure that we're identifying the right priorities and that we're really hearing from our community. So we've been holding focus groups. Our community service provider forum was one of the ways that we have done that. Our community advisory board members are helping us. So Literacy Connects is doing focus groups. The Sahuarita Food Bank is doing focus groups. So these are the ways that we are working to gather information. And if any of you are interested in that kind of thing, let me know and we'll work through that as well. So on your table, I gave you a little pamphlet, and everything that's in this pamphlet, for those online, the information is included in that link. Everything that I'm talking about is in that link. So the very first page, this is just saying any information that you provide will be anonymized and aggregated, and your individual responses to anything will not be shared to organizations, people, anything. Only information will be aggregated and given to the public. So please sign the front of it, okay?
Elon Musk, you're not going to be sharing any.
Elon's on his own. Okay. And then the second page is just some basic demographic information. Who are you? How do you use technology? Okay. You know, a little bit of, you know, what is your race and ethnicity and what do you speak in, what language do you speak at home? Those kinds of things. And you can see how if you were talking to community members, how these questions would, like, the answers might be a lot different particularly when it says, how confident do you feel using computers, tablets, or smartphones? So myself, I would answer very confident, right? But others would be like, oh, okay. So let's fill that out real quick. And I'm trying to hammer this out by 9:20, so. And while you guys are filling that out, yes, ma'am. I do. I do. Here we go. And while you guys are filling those out on the walls, there are two posters, there's three of them here. There are two posters on either side that say My Digital Life. And on your table, there are Post-it notes and markers. Please take the opportunity, I will leave them up there for a while. Please take the opportunity to answer the questions there, write something on the Post-it note and stick it on the board. They are the same on either side. Those of you online, the posters that I'm talking about that say My Digital Life are included in that link. So everything that I'm talking about, the consent form, the demographic information, the My Digital Life activity, all of that is included in that link. So if you can participate in that way, I would sincerely appreciate it. Let's give it about 30 more seconds to fill out that demographic. Well, I'll say a minute. Let's give it another minute. Okay, and so for this last part, it says small group discussion questions, okay? And what I would like you guys to do is just pair up real quickly. You guys in the corner back there, if you want to do all, just three of you, you're more than welcome to do that, okay? Pair up real quickly and kind of go through the questions that are on this page. So daily technology use. What technology devices do you use daily? And I challenge you to think about your use of technology from the moment you wake up in the morning till you get to work, till you get back home and get back in bed at night, okay? There are a lot of things that we have that are technology that we don't think about, okay? Something as simple as putting on your Apple Watch, that is technology, okay, if that's something that you use. If you have an Alexa at home or a Google device that turns your stuff on, or if you even have a smart TV that you talk to turn on or go to your favorite channels, or you have things pre-programmed in that way. Your Netflix streaming and the algorithms that, hey, here's what we recommend for you, because all you do is watch cheesy rom-coms, okay? That kind of stuff. So think about that. So if everybody would just kind of pair up and have these conversations and write down some answers, we're going to take 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Go down and dirty, make it fast. Hit the important questions, okay? Hit the important questions, and then we're going to come back and just talk about them real quick, okay?
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. I don't like that. I carry around. So that's how I like to put on and off. On and off, on and off. I like
Whenever I encounter a problem, it really increases my anxiety. I describe myself as I do email, but like GPS and those things are much above that. My wife just got hearing aids and she uses it. So I did an app and I quickly jumped, we went to the Apple store, and jumped through all the phone, next time, find out what they are.
Technology, what other technological things do you use? Smart TV. You have an iPhone?
Yeah, I have a
Smart TV.
yeah, right. Because I hardly ever use it. I just use it to call my wife.
One more minute, 1 minute.
1 minute. All right, 1 minute.
It's turn out. I love the library. I love the paper.
I will tell our communications person. All right, 30 seconds, 30 seconds.
I think my frustration got lost in the
Oh, you hold on to it, I'm gonna gather them all up.
Then later on.
All right, everybody. We could talk forever about this particular topic, truly. Truly, this is something that we could continue to talk, hold on for my grandma. We could continue to talk about for a while. Okay, because it's not only what we do for ourselves or how we engage, but it's how we help others to engage with technology. So I would like to hear a little bit about what you discussed. And yes, I'm going to record you. Because The people that are doing this for me, the lovely ladies from Lead Local, they take all of this data and kind of incorporate it into everything for our strategic plan. All right, so would anybody want to talk, speak, throw anything out there?
I will.
Okay.
I wrote down that my anxiety around tech interferes with me learning new things. Just right from the get-go, I have to get over that hurdle of my anxiety. I call myself a tech dinosaur, which isn't helpful. But that anxiety really interferes with me learning more.
Awesome. Anybody else? Don't make me volunteer
What's
I have a
question? What was the
question. And I'll take that.
Yes.
I'd like to be, no. If you don't have time for the recordings, can people email you their answers?
Oh, absolutely. I'm only gonna do a couple of things here real
Yeah.
quick.
Or put it on your form, because it's right there. The questions are right
Sure.
I just want to make sure if someone doesn't want to speak out
Oh, yeah,
today, that they
you
can
can,
email
you can more than, yes, you can
Okay.
email me. It's just, it's much more robust when somebody just tells me what they think.
Okay.
Anybody else? Yeah.
I depend a lot on tech support personnel that use screen sharing, like Smart Tutor or Log Me In, because they walk me through the process. I can't comprehend complicated, they refer you, most tech support places just refer you to a canned presentation that's very complicated. And a lot of the videos, they move so quickly and they're given by people with foreign accents. And I'm hearing impaired and visually impaired, so it's tough.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
I don't know if the library has the technology to do screen sharing, but that for people who are homebound or have difficulty traveling, that would be a big help.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for that. Anybody else? I'm like, I'm not lost.
One of my big concerns is online security, how I'm being tracked, what's being tracked, what they know about.
Awesome.
You give your name for that statement.
You did notice that I didn't ask for anyone's name, so you're not identifying yourself in this conversation.
Don't worry, it's on camera.
Currently not. Maybe even before it live. Anybody else? Yeah, right.
Yeah, we were talking about our frustrations at the end, and one thing that frustrates us both is like learning where to save stuff and then how to access it later, like between SharePoint, OneDrive, your computer, your desktop. That is something I'm struggling with.
So much. So much.
I vote for the topic of scam avoidance. Just this week, my wife was doing her email and on a Mac, supposed to be pretty safe, but something popped up and it said, "Oh, your account's been restricted. Click here to resolve this with one of our texts." And it's clearly a scam. And I think for the elderly especially, very easy to get trapped in this stuff.
You are correct. All right, last chance. Anybody else?
Well, just with AI, it's getting harder and harder. AI makes that, just what you just said, harder and harder now.
Absolutely.
And you can just add to that the cost of doing business now because of protecting the data and your internet and your Wi-Fi is incredible. And you can't choose not to do it.
I just want to go ahead and add, I just bought a newer, older car and the technology on that is driving me nuts.
Oh, yeah.
See, and when you're talking about technology, not thinking about the fact that your car is a piece of technology, right? I get emails all the time from my husband's truck telling me that his tire is low and it needs to be managed, right? Okay. I know. All right, I thank you guys so very much for your participation today. To Linda's point, if after today's meeting, you're like, I should have told her this thing, okay? You can reach me at michelle.simon@pima.gov. If you don't remember that, send it to Micah. Micah will make sure that I get it, okay?
And you are also more than welcome. If you want help, you have a community member that you are assisting that needs help, just call our office, 724-7695. And we will help connect in that way. Go ahead.
And maybe we can put your contact information, the phone number, your email when we send out the slides.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
perfect.
And these flyers here, these papers, just pass them down to the end so that I can collect them up. Thank you guys very much.
Can you do that phone number one more time, please?
724-7695.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now, I think, so I'm sure we're all very aware, there have been a number of changes, and things that we've seen on a federal, state and local level, that it may be a surprise to some of us. But I know, yeah, I feel like I've heard it somewhere on the interwebs. On the Google. So, to help us navigate that, because it is a very fluid, ever-changing situation. I feel like every time I pull up a news app or I get an alert, something new has changed. Maddy is here to help give us a bigger picture of what is going on a national and state and even local level for us to kind of help us all get on the same page with at least what has happened in the last couple of months and where we are now, and how that impacts us moving forward. So thank you for joining us, Maddy. We really appreciate you being here and making this information accessible and relevant to us. So thanks.
We miss you.
Yes, we did miss you. If we
I
can't
was
have you
just
in person-
thinking when Robert said his introduction, I was just thinking it is a different feel in Tucson when you know everyone. I was just walking. Well, I wasn't walking my dog because she just had her toe amputated, so she can't walk. But I was walking in my neighborhood, and another person with her dog stopped me and was from Tucson, and I was wearing a U of A shirt, and it brought back so much community. So I miss you guys and love being out here, but it is kind of a hectic time. And speaking of technology, I think connecting to your Tesla on the White House lawn is probably among the highest technology priorities for our so wanted to go ahead and get started in terms of where we're going. I want to give a little bit of a broad overview, and I don't mean this conversation to be solely focused on funding, but so much changes are happening around funding at this particular time, and that's going to bring broad changes to our local community. So if you want to go to the next slide. A little bit about me. For most of you, you know me. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I run Bynes Consulting Group. We have a number of consultants. Some of them work in Tucson, some of them work in DC, some of them work in Ireland. So any needs that you have, feel free to reach out to us. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so the most important thing that I want to just kind of level set on is the federal budget. If any of you joined the Medicaid talk on Friday, this slide will be familiar to you. But if you didn't, it's important to know. So there's a big kind of misconception that you can just cut federal spending, and that's an easy thing to do. It's really not an easy thing to do. There are kind of three big categories of federal spending. There's mandatory spending, which is 61% of our spending at the federal level. And those are programs where Congress sets the parameter for the program, but then money is doled out based on the parameters. So think of things like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Congress says, to get Social Security, broadly speaking, you have to be 65 or 67, depending on, when you retire. And then you get your Social Security benefit. It's not based on how much money Congress has to spend. Discretionary spending, on the other hand, is based on how much money Congress has to spend, and it's determined annually. So you don't determine the parameters, well, Congress doesn't determine the parameters around it. And they're not strict entitlement programs where if you qualify, you get it. And I want to hone in on this discretionary aspect. So that's 26% of the federal budget. That can be split into two categories. So the part that we probably care about the most in this room is the non-defense discretionary. So that's all of the discretionary funding that's not Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That is also not the military. So that's 14% of the federal budget. Also notably, and I think it's really important as we look at the landscape of things, we're paying 13% of our national budget every year is on interest to the national debt. And that's just interest to the debt. That's not a payment on the principal of the debt. So we're not bringing down the debt at all. We're just paying the interest. That's 13% of our overall budget, which is financially unhealthy. And so I think that that needs to be acknowledged as we look at how we deal with that problem and the many other problems we have. Next slide, please. All right, so what are we talking about when we talk about non-defense discretionary? Do any of these programs on the screen look familiar to anyone? So that's all these programs are non-defense discretionary. We're talking about veterans programs, we're talking about SNAP, we're talking about Older Americans Act, we're talking about CDBG and SSBG money. And I'll get to this a bit later, much of that money is not federal money. Well, it is federal money, but it goes to states and counties and local governments. And so a lot of that also looks like state and county and city money as well. Next slide, please. The other thing that I would say is that the non-defense discretionary budget is about $1.7 trillion. Our entire federal budget is about $7 trillion. If we're looking at cutting to make sure our deficit is about anywhere between $2 and $3 trillion, even if you cut every single non-defense discretionary program, you would not have enough money to not have a deficit. So you have to touch mandatory programs if you want a balanced budget. So that's just a side note as we get into kind of like where we're at right now. When we're looking at FY 2025, you'll notice I say FY 2025 funding. What's up with that? We're halfway through FY 2025. Why are we still talking about this? That's because Congress actually never passed appropriations bills for FY 2025. They're on what's called a continuing resolution. And that's essentially a procedural piece of legislation that allows Congress to kick the can down the road. And they've been doing that all year long. Well, the can was kicked down the road in December, and the can is on the road for tomorrow. So we are headed very quickly towards a government shutdown. The House did pass, luckily, a bill to kind of do another continuing resolution. It does have some cuts in it, but it would keep the government open. The Senate now has to pass the bill, but the Senate has to pass the bill by a 2/3 majority. So they need both Republicans and Democrats to agree on this, which I don't know if you've had any Thanksgiving dinner conversations, but I certainly have, and that's far from where we are in our society today. So, we need probably around 7 or 8 Democrats to get on board with the Republican spending items. And that's going to be challenging. And they have 24 hours to do that, or else the government shuts down. So that's a really looming big issue. And I know PCOA sent out an advocacy alert earlier this week asking folks to call their members of Congress and write to their members of Congress. And I still encourage people to do that. I think that that's really important. But I do want to move on to FY 2026. So next slide. So for FY 2026, as I said, the US government, we spend more than we take in, and that's what's called a deficit. The debt is the accumulation of that spending more than you take in over time, but the deficit is what you spend more than you take in every single year. So our deficit's around $2 to $3 trillion any given year. But why are we talking about it now? Well, this was a huge campaign promise for the Trump administration was we're going to balance the budget. And they have political feasibility in that right now. They have a Republican controlled House and a Republican controlled Senate. And I don't, obviously, I'm not a fan of the Tesla car show that happened, but I'm not trying to be super partisan here. It's just that all three of the bodies that we need for lawmaking are controlled by Republicans. That's just fact. So we have the ability to move forward legislation that the Republican caucus would like to move forward. Like I said, there's an ever-growing national debt. It is a serious problem. If I realize that we're talking about other serious problems as well, like serving our communities and making sure that people have access to healthcare. Those are also serious problems, but we cannot ignore that the national debt is also a serious problem. Project 2025, which has been informing much of the House Republican caucus kind of actions and the president's actions, that calls for significant cuts in what we historically have supported as an Elder Alliance. And I'll get to this, the budget reconciliation bill for FY 2026, so next fiscal year, calls for $880 billion of cuts in the health and human services kind of area. Now, those cuts will have to encompass Medicaid. There will have to be Medicaid cuts. There's no financial way to get to $880 billion of cuts without touching Medicaid. So that's why you've heard a lot about Medicaid. But other programs are really going to be impacted as well. We could see impacts to Medicare. We could see impacts to the Older Americans Act. We could see impacts to SNAP and to housing subsidies. So many of the programs that many of the clients in our community rely on. Like I said, there's kind of a procedural vote that happens, and you can think of this a little bit like a credit card spending limit. So budget reconciliation is a process in which the Senate only needs 51 votes because they usually need 60 votes to get something through. They only need 51 votes to get a budget passed. And budget reconciliation kind of sets the caps to where you need to be for the budget in each committee of jurisdiction. Appropriations is the actual disbursement of those funds. And so that's really important to know. We have not gotten to appropriations with FY 2026 yet. That happens over the summer. But we have done budget reconciliation, and that's why the alarm bells are sounding. Because under budget reconciliation, the House and Senate in February passed along party lines a bill that calls for $880 billion of cuts, and that's going to largely impact Medicaid, is what we're understanding. But when you impact Medicaid, you're also impacting Medicare, and you're also impacting Older Americans Act. So there's a lot that kind of we're worried about here. But Older Americans Act, I think that one's important as well. So it was reauthorized last in 2020. We're actually not an authorized bill right now for the Older Americans Act, which is problematic. It targets this specific funding for cuts from the Department of Government Efficiency. And it's been around since 1965. The Older Americans Act does a whole bunch of things, but primarily it funds a lot of what PCOA does. And it's big in every community across the nation. There are 620 something area. I think actually now 614. It's always changing. 614 area agencies on aging across the country. So there's one in every single community. So we really need to both have the funding, which is the appropriations piece to All Americans Act, and we need to have the local flexibility and control to allow for proper disbursement of those services. Next slide, please. I want to say that when you're funding the Older Americans Act or when you're doing anything to the Older Americans Act, it's not just PCOA. I know we've talked a lot about PCOA in this group in the past. It's not just PCOA that's impacted. You have the money that flows down, and the Area Agency on Aging disperses that money into the community, into so many different service providers. And so we're talking about $8.7 million of funding that is tied up in the Older Americans Act just for Pima County. And that can include those meals programs that Robert talked about at the beginning with the community food bank. That can include, home care provisions, all of that kind of stuff. So I want to be clear when we're talking about why this is important. It's not just important for PCOA. Of course, that's important, but it's important for so many of the nonprofits in this room, and it's important for many of the service providers in our community. Next slide, please. So what are we looking at in terms of reauthorization? We need a reauthorized bill for the Older Americans Act. So reauthorization is basically Congress's way of reviewing a bill and looking at, what can we change in here, what works in today's environment, all that kind of stuff. We don't want any major changes to the Older Americans Act right now. It is far too partisan in politics, and we don't want to ruffle any feathers. We want a bipartisan Older Americans Act that everyone can agree on. So here are some things that our national association and our state association have been really advocating for over the past year. One is to clarify the state's authority in area agencies on aging being able to have contracts with outside entities. So there's very confusing language, and this is a little insider baseball, but there's very confusing language in the Older Americans Act about this. Basically says the state of Arizona has to approve every single contract that the area agency on aging enters into, and it doesn't allow for enough innovation or flexibility at the local level, which is really needed to drive change in our communities right now. We also need to increase the funding authorization levels. So this isn't how much funding actually goes into your communities. This is increasing the authorization for that funding. So increasing kind of the entire ceiling for that funding. We also want to, obviously COVID-19 was huge in how we operate. And I think a great example of that is the technology discussion you all just had. But we learned so much from operating during COVID-19, and some things worked really well. A lot of the things that we want to change in terms of those flexibilities are around nutrition programming. So making it easier for people to get access to nutritious food and making it easier for communities to meet the needs across the country, especially rural areas, tribal areas, being able to do grab and go meals and have more flexibility in that. We also want to expand the access to evidence-informed care as well as evidence-based care. So the Older Americans Act right now is very heavily evidence-based care, but we found during the COVID-19 pandemic that, when we had switched to virtual programming, for instance, that wasn't part of the evidence base. So that would be evidence-informed and subsequently not meeting the standards that are set forth in the Older Americans Act. So trying to kind of navigate into this new post-pandemic world. Next slide, please. The Medicaid problem, I talked a bit about this before, but we're going to see a major fight around Medicaid this year. 60% of older adults rely on Medicaid for coverage of long-term care. I would say 40% of children also rely on Medicaid for their physical health coverage. It's important to note that only 13% of our national budget is on the interest. A little more than 10% of our national budget is actually spent on Medicaid. So this is going to be a big issue, and it's going to impact how states operate. So Medicaid is a federal and state partnership, and that's honestly a whole nother can of ball of wax. I don't know. It's a whole nother issue that I could get into. But there, it's pretty complicated. But it's going to, if there are federal cuts, it will affect almost every single state program that the state of Arizona funds. Next slide, please. So where does that leave us on the state level? On the state level, we're looking at last year an $18 million budget. And like I said, the big question on the table right now is, where are those federal funds coming from? So we talked about Medicaid. If Medicaid is cut, that's $2.7 billion. I put million, I should have put billion. That's my mistake. $2.7 billion of funds that would be impacted. So you could take that kind of orange pie piece out. That doesn't mean that the state has $2.7 billion of revenue that it can then just pump into Medicaid. That means that the state's going to have to figure out, okay, well, from the taxes that the state collects, where are we going to move things around? And it's not just Medicaid. You'll know that there's, at the federal level, the discussion of closing down the Department of Education. Well, $7.8 billion of state funding is education funding. It's by far the largest portion of our state budget. So if that money goes away, then where are we going to pull from to make sure that schools stay open? Where are we going to pull from to make sure that people have health insurance? And so this is really a reconfiguration of the state budget. And we are going to see the impacts. And it's going to be impacts across the board. It's not just going to be, and why I'm talking about education or universities or anything like that. Any of these types of things, if they change very drastically, it's a cut in our community. And it's a shrinking of the pie as a whole. So we're going to see that being an issue for us in the elder care space as well. Next slide, please. So what are AZ Aging's priorities? AZ Aging is the statewide association of area agencies on aging in Arizona. We're asking for an additional $5 million for home and community-based services and an additional $5 million for housing assistance. We did have 4 bills introduced at the beginning of the legislative session. None of them got hearings. So we're working at the legislature to kind of work around that into the appropriations process. Next slide, please. So at the local level, we have a lot of very similar challenges. And what I really want to talk about here is what's called state shared revenue. So local governments, both cities and counties, get money from the state of Arizona that comes in from the federal government to supplement their budgets. In Tucson, this is around $233 million. And so if there are cuts at the federal level, that's going to trickle down to the state, which trickles down to the local level. That could be disastrous for the county and for the city. And we know that they're already facing whatever way you voted on Prop 14, which is, don't live there anymore, so it's not my deal. Whatever way you voted on that, it is clear, regardless of what the outcome of that the city of Tucson is in a budget crisis that does not have enough funding to do the things that it wants to do. if we take away this state shared revenue, we're taking away that federal money that is able to help the city supplement the programs. So the city is in kind of the same position that the state's in, right? Okay, well, how do we backfill this with city tax dollars? Or the county too is in the same position. How do we backfill this with county dollars? So there's not a lot of great answers right now, just a lot of really big concerning questions of what's going on at the federal level. What are we expecting in terms of cuts, and where does that leave us at the state and the county and the local level? If you've talked to any of your elected officials recently, you'll have heard them voice the same issue. They don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And that is very concerning from a stability standpoint. Next slide, please. So I always like to leave on how you can help in this situation. If you work at an organization, your board of directors and executive team should be developing policy priorities so that you can quickly act. Washington is notorious for moving slow and then moving really fast when it needs to. So you'll probably notice sometime later today that there will be some form of vote on the funding package, the day before it's supposed to happen, go into effect, right? But they had months and months to figure this out. That's why you need things like policy priorities. Policy priorities allow your leadership to really understand when to move fast and what to move fast on. It's also important that you send letters to your members of Congress about this on behalf of your board of directors. So sending letters to your members of Congress about funding, about concerns about Medicaid, all of that kind of stuff. It's also important that you meet with your members of Congress, especially Congressman Ciscomani. Congressman Ciscomani is on the Appropriations Committee. He's an appropriator from Arizona. And so he needs to know how the decisions that he is helping to craft in Congress impact our community. And while I would say your community, it's really important. And then you should, at the state level, sign up for RTS. That is a system where you can sign in to support or oppose bills at the state level. And that's a great way to stay engaged there. And then testify, mobilize advocates, put together videos of how these things impact you and your organization. There's a bunch of ways to help, and different advocacy strategies or different approaches can help for everyone. So next slide, please. I am here to help you virtually, of course, and I do come back once a quarter. But I'm here to help you. I consult with many folks in this room already. If you need assistance in your advocacy and you need to talk through this stuff, that's happening right now, I'm happy to have a conversation. Feel free to give me a call. Feel free to shoot me an email. I care deeply about Tucson. I want to help connect Tucson's nonprofits out here in Washington, D.C. So with that, I know that's a lot of information to throw at everyone. Does anyone have any questions?
Maddy, can you hear me?
You're kind of muffled.
I don't know how to, I'm wondering if she can let us know how to sign up for this RTS.
So the question I think is, how do you sign up for RTS? So RTS, you actually have to go up to the state legislature and sign up in their building, which is kind of the ridiculousness of it all. So there are some local advocacy groups that can help you in doing that. So for instance, they can take your name and email and phone number and sign up and create a password and send it to you, but then you can do it on your computer. So I'll find some of those local advocacy groups. I didn't think about that last night when I was making these slides. I'll find some local advocacy groups and send them out to Micah.
And Maddie, don't forget, Chris Cutshaw, who is United Way's Director of Health and Public Policy, is willing to do, we can get her scheduled to do like a little mini workshop about how to do that.
Absolutely. And we have a hand from Hal online. Hal, if you want to unmute and ask, go ahead.
Yeah, just additional information on signing up for RTS, which stands for Request to Speak before a legislative committee hearing. You can also sign up at the state office building in Tucson. There is a kiosk there where you can do it. So you don't have to go up to Phoenix.
That's great. Thanks, Hal.
I have a question, Maddie. It's Liz. Hi. We've heard from various elected officials that the mass emails that, we produce that people just kind of sign their name onto are all good and fine, but that actually picking up the phone and calling them or visiting them really tends to leave a much bigger impression. Would you agree with that? And are there resources for people to be able to do that? How do we find our phone number for our elected officials, that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure, I think picking up the phone and calling leaves a bigger impression. I think that meeting leaves a bit bigger impression. If all you can do is submit a comment or like sign on to an advocacy letter, that is great. And I encourage you to do that. But if you can do more, do more. That's really important right now. If you need to find your members of Congress, I know they're easily accessible on PCOA's website, but they're also like you could Google member of Congress in my area, and their phone numbers are pretty easily accessible. Also, if you're an organization and you need help connecting to these offices or thinking through, okay, how am I going to have that discussion with my member of Congress? That's where I come in. I'm happy to help talk you through that. Help with setting up meetings, all of that kind of stuff. So feel free to give me a call. And even if you're not an organization and you're just feeling uncomfortable about it, I really am happy just have a conversation. I think it's important everyone. I no longer have members of Congress, so I think it's important everyone gets to talk to theirs.
Also, I want to say, this is Allison again. So League of Women Voters of Greater Tucson has also, every year they publish a hard copy as well of the, local and who's the representatives, has maps in it, has all the phone numbers right there. I do have some copies. If anybody wants one today, I can go grab one from my office. They have them. They will also have a table at the Festival of Books and may have them there, so we can arrange getting hard copies to people.
And one other thing for organizations, we've been told that if you as an entity want to have a letter of support drafted that has all your board members' names on it, use your letterhead, that it's really impactful if the board actually signs, right? That it's clear that they've all been engaged in the conversation. And so just little things, it's a heavier lift than just putting something on letterhead, but if the board can have their signatures as well.
Real quick, this is Aldry. I've been calling Congressman Ciscomani regularly. I think Brian and Kyle and them, I think they know me now. I won't lie to you, because this whole thing, all of this have caught us. This is kind of crazy. I sometimes I ask myself, is this really happening? All this stuff that I'm saying, is this truly happening? Now the one thing I don't see, Maddie, is a talk of taxes. I keep hearing about all this cutting. But what I don't hear is that everyone, I pay my taxes every year. And I don't mind paying my taxes because I believe that together, when we stand together, we're going to go further. And I need to know that we want everyone. I don't care if you're a billionaire, middle class, or if you have the means and you know that you owe, you need to pay so that we can keep our country strong and going forward. And as I hate to say this, for those who are not faith-based, but I am faith-based, and Jesus said the poor will always be here. They're not going anywhere. You can't wish them away. And if we have someone that needs that help, because they have worked long and hard and now they've got disability, we need to make sure they are taken care of. These are our elders. This is our wisdom. And unfortunately, I just feel like sometimes this is what's wrong with our communities when we don't treat our elders with that respect so that our young people can know that don't treat them like they're crazy. They might be, but for the most part, they're gonna be telling you they're gonna be telling you the truth. Because like I say, if you think of generation after generation, how things change, things are changing rapidly, like when we got the computer and now we've got more technology, and as things go forward, we want to make sure that people have that ability to learn. That's the reason why I love this digital inclusion today. Because at my church, we did a program where we had young people come in and team up with an elder or an older adult, and I learned how to use my phone so quick. You know what I'm saying? So it's those kind of things that as a community, but I just want to know that I'm looking at the fact that we got new diseases that are coming out here at us. Not just no longer COVID-19. You've got, there's measles, rubella, and all this stuff about vaccines. But when they fired the Ebola office, that's serious. That is really serious. And so, Maddy, these are the kind of things that I am really concerned with. And when you said that you're going to meet with Cisco Monty, before they told them don't have no more town halls, last month or a month and a half ago, I was asking for a town hall from him to come in and explain to the people what's going on, what we're seeing. And I don't know if that's going to ever happen. But I don't think he's going to come in on the 20th when they've asked him to come in, because I signed up to go to that because I really want to hear from my representatives. We have voted for you. You have promised. You promised on the campaign. You promised to fight for Arizonans. And if you can't come and talk to me, don't come 2026 and ask for my vote. Okay? I mean, that is where I am. I vote, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't care if you're purple, polka dot. If you're not gonna fight for me, if you're not gonna do for me, do for my country, don't come and ask for my vote. I'm sorry, that's all I gotta say.
No, I think, thank you, Audrey. And when you started talking about revenue being brought into the federal government, for those of you who in the room know me well, that's one of my favorite things to talk about, because we keep talking about cuts and them running things like a business. Well, I'm sorry, if I have a financial deficit in my household, I go drive for Uber. Like, you can find new ways to get revenue into the government. Instead, we happen to just be cutting half the IRS workforce who collects that on billionaires. So that's not good. I could get really fired up about the revenue piece of things, but I agree with you that, all of this is about I have never sounded so patriotic in my life, I swear. Our country is based on really, it's based on us being there. And if you're not there and you're not talking to your members of elected office, then it's not going to work right. They honestly, they should, and I don't mean this, and especially because I live in Washington, D.C. and NSA, I'm not saying anything security wise. I'm just, they should be afraid for your votes. They should be wanting to earn your votes. This is something that they should be catering to, is you, and what you believe. And I think that in some areas that is happening, and in some areas that is not happening. But they don't know unless you make your voice heard. And that shouldn't just happen when you go to the polls. That should be happening. Democracy is an iterative process, and that process needs to be followed in off years. It needs to be followed right now. And we're talking about cuts that mean that the poorest among us would lose their most basic services. it is upon all of us. If you work in an organization that serves people, it is upon you to speak out for that population that has trouble speaking out for themselves. So I would just leave you all with the motivation to please go and speak with your members of Congress, speak with your state legislators. And sometimes it does feel like you're hitting your head against a brick wall. Just keep doing it. I know that that is the literal definition of insanity, but in this case, it's important. So I've been doing this for like 15 years, and I can tell you sometimes I still feel that way. But it's still important for you all to do. Does anyone else have any questions? I don't want to like take up too much time.
We're after 10 now.
Right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thank you. Before everyone heads out,
We just have one more thing.
Just one really
we have a
quick
question.
thing.
Yeah,
I think,
we're gonna wrap up.
I think as we move forward outside of this space, recognizing the call to action that Maddy gave all of us to take action, whether that is through an email or calling or meeting with your elected and appointed officials is one really important piece of that. And I think the other piece to me that stands out that is really important as we leave this space is that this is representative of how we approach this and how we kind of move forward successfully, both professionally and personally, and all those things in this space. That it is about connection. It is not about us doing this by ourselves and singularly in a bubble or in a silo. And so it is about maintaining connection with one another and fostering the relationships that we currently have and building new relationships. And around this table, we heard from people that this is their first time around this table today. And we have folks that have been around this table since the table was created. And so as you look around this space, we would challenge you today to find someone that you do not regularly connect with or that you do not currently have a relationship with. And it can't just be the people that are here for the first time. Because they do not have that much time for a million lunches. But as you look around the table, find a person to connect with over the course of the next month and reach out to them, whether it is today or this week, and use that intentionality to build a new relationship and reach out to someone who you already have a relationship with, but maybe you haven't connected with in a little while, and not just about work. Yes, Mary, I know. We're on the schedule. And set a time to get together and just connect. And I think maintaining those connections right now is more important than ever. So that is our request to you as you leave this space.
And if I can just, sorry to, but if you're working with an organization that could possibly adopt this elder rehab program, please, if you could stay here just for a few minutes to talk with Sharon and myself. If you can't even afford that, there's some handouts here about the program and how to contact Sharon. We would hate to see this program die. She's willing to pass it on to the next adoptive family organization. So, yeah, please.
I saw a hand over here.
Yes, I just have a follow-up question to Rebecca's point. Would we receive like a list of contact information from the participants here? How would we be able to connect?
If you don't get their email directly, you're always welcome to reach out to me, drop the name. I'll give you the email if everyone's okay with that, and always happy to connect everyone. And
in general, the Elder Alliance listserv has never been a secret. Is there anyone in the room who would object to something other than a blind copy list? You know, that so that everyone can see the emails for people who are receiving information.
it'll just be email and names.
Yeah, that's great.
Before everyone gets up and moves, I just want to close a little bit and say a few things. One, just thank you, Maddy, possibly left, and thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for being here. Another actionable movement for organizing your own policies. Historically, Elder Alliance has, your agenda has all of our action teams, their schedules, and a little bit about them. We encourage you to get involved, and we are lifting up the older adult policy action team, historically the advocacy team. We really want to focus in on policy with this team, and so we have shifted the name a little bit, and we encourage you to join. April 8th is our next meeting. And we can use that time to learn about requests to speak and processes, learn about policy and much more. There's also the Voices Connectors, our wonderful 4 Voices Connectors who are our community mobilizers, are Algerie and Josefina and Yolanda and Lucy, and we encourage you to get in touch with them, get to know them, bring them to your organization for more education and learning. The last thing, if you used a mug today, feel free to just leave it at the table. We can do a big mug dishwashing session after, so that you're not scrambling for what to do with your mug. And thank you all so much for coming this morning. Please stay, enjoy more coffee and pastries, meet each other, organize, build relationships. And Allison,
This is guys for the League of Women Voters, but I also sent the link to Micah and others, so that it'll come out in the notes from here, because they do have it electronic as well on their website, so.
and I'll share slideshows and anything you saw today. Let's share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,